All right, so I think most of you know me. My name's Robert Rose. I've lived in the area here. I wasn't born here, but I haven't lived here the whole time, but I've lived here altogether about 54 years here in the community. So I've become known as something of an environmental activist. I took quite a bit of science during my undergraduate career at A&M, and initially I was involved in transportation activism, especially for bicycles and multimodal transportation, and that through circumstances of fate transitioned into activism about air issues, air quality issues, and then that gradually transitioned into water quality issues. So when I was in Washington, D.C., I worked part of the time for an attorney that was involved in what we call toxic tort, which is environmental litigation dealing with toxic things in the environment that cause people to get sick. Okay. So I've also served as a research assistant at Texas A&M for a time. And I've also been a long-time business owner here in the area. Just a couple nights ago, I was talking to one of the city planners, and they said, "Robert, I heard your name came up about this water meeting. I didn't know you did that." And I said, "Well, I do bikes and I do other things too." So here I am basically. So in the past, I've argued with TCEQ, which is the state environmental agency about both air and water issues. I'm also I've been chosen to be an incoming graduate student in urban planning at A&M coming up in the fall. And my focus is basically better designing built environment to be responsive to climate change. And water is certainly a part of that. So just real quickly, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this at the moment, but maybe I can talk more about it in a minute. A couple of water-related issues I've been involved with. There is an arsenic plume in Bryan. Very few people know about it, and so I'll show you a picture. You probably can't see much from there. I actually got a picture of it. So there's an arsenic plume that's emanating from the park South Villa Maria, and this site was the location of a series of agrochemical companies, and the arsenic plume is running through the groundwater and under South College currently. They've put up permeable reactive barriers to try and stop it. It's not entirely working, and so that's one issue that I was involved with. The other issue that I briefly was involved in a few years ago, a graduate student at A&M did a study. Some of our local water fountains showed trace amounts of lead, and fortunately, the amounts of lead were below what's called the action level. But it's still a concern because we know that there's actually no safe level of lead in our water. So we do have some local water issues to be aware of. But the main focus today, I think, is basically on just the availability of water, so to speak. So I thought I'd start out with kind of some fun facts and kind of some water 101. Can anyone tell me what the percentage of water is in our oceans and seas? Considering all the water in the world, what percent is in our oceans and our seas? Anyone? What's that? No, just water and the oceans and seas. What percent? Good guess is not about 97%. About 97% of all the water on Earth is in our oceans and seas. And the groundwater that we're most concerned with is actually less than 2% of all the water in the world. So the water that we depend on for our daily use is less than 2% of all the world water in the world. Okay. How many people do we gain in terms of population? How many people do we gain in Texas each day? Good guess. Okay, we gain about 1,500 people a day in Texas between migrations and bursts. According to the governor's office, our population goes up 1,500 people a day. Okay, and in the city of Bryan, the average water usage is 127 gallons a day. So you can do the math and imagine how much more water we need every day just to support a gain of 1,500 people a day. Okay. According to here's another question. According to the City of Bryan website, the City of Bryan has an aquifer storage and recovery program. According to the discussion on the website, in what year will water demand exceed supply? In what year will water demand exceed supply? Okay, so the answer is 2030, and the Texas Water Board, in their report from 2022, so the Texas Water Plan says that the city of Bryan's demand will exceed supply by 2030. Okay, so less than 5 years, basically. All right. Let's talk about briefly, there's an important law when we're talking about water. Has everyone heard of the rule of capture? Everyone heard of the rule of capture? Okay. So the rule of capture has dominated the discussion about water in Texas for over 100 years. Okay, the rule of capture is not something new. Okay, it says that landowners can pump as much groundwater as they can from beneath their property. Okay, so if you're a landowner, according to the rule of capture, you can pump as much groundwater as you can from beneath your property. Okay, if it affects the wells around you, that's not your problem. Okay. The other aspect is that groundwater is considered unowned until it's pumped to the surface. Okay, groundwater is considered unowned until it's pumped to the surface. The only real check on the rule of capture is that the groundwater conservation districts are authorized to manage the resources of the aquifer. Okay, so the rule of capture and the groundwater districts kind of butt heads together, and then what results out of that is essentially water policy. Okay. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, have we heard the term desired future conditions? Desired future conditions. Okay. So desired future conditions are essentially a goal or a target for water levels in the aquifer, and they also pertain to what are called spring flow rates and the total volume of water in the aquifer. Okay, so the desired future conditions are a target or a goal. Okay, City of Bryan gets much of its water from the Simsboro Aquifer, and the desired future conditions are estimated from the year 2000 to the year 2070. Okay, and it's estimated that between the year 2000 and 2070, that the water level in the Simsboro Aquifer will go down 262 feet. And as of 2025, we're at 68 feet. Okay, so it sounds like quite a bit of water, and it is. Now, here's the catch. When other entities come in and want to withdraw a whole bunch of water from our aquifers, that changes the desired future conditions. Okay, that changes the goal and the target. So it's kind of essentially a moving target. And if a whole bunch of people draw water from the aquifer, then we may not make it to 2070. Okay, we may indeed run out of water by 2030. All right. So let's talk about what we can do. Okay, let's talk about what we can do. There's a close relationship. The more that you do this, the more you realize that transportation and water and atmospheric science are all related. Okay, it's all related. There's an interplay with it. And let's talk about cooling our cities. Okay, and what that would do. If we could cool our cities, we could probably decrease our municipal water usage. All right. So a problem that we have is that with our traditional development, the amount of concrete that we put down, we create heat islands. Right? We create very hot islands, and that affects our weather, and that affects the amount of rainfall that we get. So one strategy would be we could work on strategies to cool our cities. And we have some good tools in the toolbox to do that. Okay. We can plant trees, which provide shade. And trees also cool our cities when they emit water from their leaves. It takes heat with it. It's called transpo-evaporation. So they cool our cities that way. Okay, we could better design our roadways. We can use reflective surfaces on our roadways to reflect heat. We could do a cool roof program as they've done in Dallas. Okay, Dallas has an ordinance in place that requires a cool roof strategy for all new development. And that can be white roofs, that can be green roofs. Okay, it's been shown that if we could simply cool our roofs in our cities extensively, we could cool our cities. Why aren't we doing that locally? Why aren't we doing it in other cities? I don't know. So in thinking about this, in all the strategies, we need to decrease water usage. We need to increase supply. We need to cool our cities, which could include a heat mitigation plan, as a number of cities have. And this is kind of my last thought, is that here locally, with the resources of Texas A&M, we have some of the best and the brightest people in their fields here in the nation and even the world. We have a huge brain trust here, the best minds in the world. And we have the Texas Extension Service to help implement the knowledge that we have. And we also have a literal army of young and idealistic students that I think really do want to make the world a better place. Okay, we see that in the big event locally. We see thousands of young students wanting to help, wanting to do something positive for the community. We've got all the resources here. We've got the knowledge, we've got the enthusiasm, we've got the people to really do something special in College Station and become a leader in the nation in this effort. We've got all the ingredients. Why aren't we doing it? And so I'll leave it with that thought for you. Thanks.
Howdy, y'all. So my name is Clayton Tucker. I am the secretary of the Texas Farmers Union, We were founded in 1902 in Point, Texas, and been fighting for family farmers ever since. And water, as y'all can imagine, is a very, very big issue for us. So before all of that, I also was a water researcher back in college. I went to school at Southwestern University, and I got into a summer program where we were studying water policies of the United States compared to China, actually. We were in basically like the West Virginia, where they do all the coal mining and also a lot of aluminum, and we visited a lot of farms. And we were seeing like what their water policies are, how it's affecting the water tables. I frankly just think those folks wanted a farm kid to be there so they would like understand farm stuff. So, and I am from Lampasas. For folks who don't know where Lampasas is, if you could find the dead center of Texas, you can find Lampasas. And like most other areas in Texas, we are actually on track to lose our water by 2030 as well. It's kind of a common theme because this is happening not just here, it's happening everywhere. You know, West Texas, the Upwell Aquifer is draining incredibly fast. Once that goes, West Texas cattle and cotton and everything else will go with it. Even just a little north of us, our neighbors in Palestine, there are two billionaires that are trying to build a couple wells to take 98.9% of all their groundwater. You're talking 15 billion gallons of water per year. And these water wars, these water fights are going to continue. This is an isolated event. They're trying, you know, there are a number of issues. So from our point of view, I think we all recognize by being here, water is an issue and we need to do something about it. So what can we do? It really falls into three big categories as far as my personal opinion and also some of the opinion of our members. One is, of course, conservation. But there's something that we could do that would save a lot of water. It sounds so simple, it almost sounds dumb. But let's fix the leaky pipes. You know, like I was listening to a podcast actually over here talking about Austin. Y'all know how much water Austin loses every single year because of leaky pipes? 9.3 billion gallons a year. That is the equivalent. Let's say you live in Austin, right? And it would be like you going to HEB, buying 23 gallons of water, stepping outside, pouring them on the street, and doing that every single day, the entire year. 23 gallons of water per person per day is being lost. And this isn't just unique to Austin, it's happening everywhere. A lot of this pipe infrastructure was built, I mean, some of it is Civil War era, some of it is the 1910s, it's the Great Depression era. It's old infrastructure, but because it's out of sight, out of mind, we don't really think about it. So really fixing pipes is something that a lot of the cities can do. Another thing, a lot of again, kind of continuing on this more city focus, you know, the number one use of water in Dallas is lawns. And look, I'm a country kid. I love nature. I prefer jungles over concrete jungles, right? I understand the desire to have green grass, the desire to have green lawn. I honest to God do. There's a couple other varieties you can do. You could go with more native grasses, native Texas grasses, do a lot better. They're a lot more drought resistant. I think cities could even consider, they do it, I can't remember where they do this, but where if you go xeriscaping, you get a tax rebate on your property taxes. So this, again, if someone wants to do it, I don't want to take that away from them, but I think we need to start changing that culture, giving like benefits to folks who want to go xeriscape. On the farmer side, there are a couple things we could do. Because I would argue, at least on the farmer side, it's not a supply issue, it's a management issue. So I'm now a big proponent of, some of y'all may have heard this, regenerative ranching. You can also think of it as traditional ranching. Like, this is how my granddaddy, his great-granddaddy farmed before a lot of these industrial chemicals came about. For farmers, that includes cover crops and kind of rotating what plants you use. For ranchers like myself, multi-species and rotating. And here's why this is important, because doing that actually increases the amount of water that goes back into the soil. So let's say this is a plot of land right here, and this is bare land, like bare soil, there's nothing on it, no grass, no nothing. This can only absorb a third of an inch of water. After a third of an inch, the soil, the molecular part of it changes, it seals it, no more water gets in. So you can get 3 inches of, like the other day, my passes, we got 2.5 inches of rain. Great, loved it. Anyone that bare soil like this, even that 2 inches, 2.5 inches, they only really got a third of that. Only a third of that entered into the soil. The rest of it, it's runoff or evaporation. Because here's another thing to remember. So like when you're driving around, you see some grass outside, you see some plants. However tall that grass is how deep the roots go. It's a good rule of thumb. It's not 100%, but when those roots go in, they create avenues for the water to go in. So you could easily multiply how much water is entering the soil, and then it holds the soil better. It stops erosion, and then that. So when we hit these dry periods, there's more water in the soil. I don't need to irrigate as much. Actually, in the parts that we've now gone for regenerative, we don't need to irrigate at all, and our creeks are fuller than they've ever been. Even like on wet years, like we've had wet years before, but like it's just the amount of improvement has been astronomical. And the nice thing about it, it's also economically a good thing for us because it cuts our inputs very significantly. It cuts our how much money we have to spend on diesel and equipment and everything else. So that's something farmers on our side can do is start moving back to these, what you consider like pre-World War II practices, pre-industrial agriculture practices. Not all at once, we don't want to be too quick on this. We gotta keep our food system stable, but kind of moving that way, even a little bit at a time, will dramatically help increase the amount of water entering our soil. The other thing, and I know a lot of folks bring this up, is desalinization. Now, there are two major issues with desal, and we have a solution for one of them, and the other one is still is on basket of marbles. So one of the big issues with desalinization is it is very, very, very expensive. Hugely expensive right now. It's very energy intensive. Abilene Christian University is coming out with some new technology that, if it works in practice as well as it works in theory, could dramatically lessen that cost. You're talking pennies on the dollar compared to what it used to be. And it also generates electricity, so then our electricity will also start getting cheaper as well. So that is hopefully, I don't think this is real wood, but in case it is wood, that will really help the desal movement. And that's not even just for the coast. I don't know if y'all know this, but the largest desalinization plant in the United States is based in El Paso. There's a lot of briny, salty aquifers that desal can work with as well. The problem with desal, and this is more of an issue on the coast, is what do you do with the salt? What do you do with the brine? Because if you just dump it in the Gulf of Mexico, you will kill the entire fishing industry, the entire shrimping industry. The shrimping industry is almost gone as it is. It dropped like 60% in the 1990s. Texas went from doing like 40% of the nation's shrimp down to 4%. So our coastal folks, our coastal neighbors are very, very concerned about that. And that we currently don't have any real issue, right? Any real solutions for. That's what we can work on large scale. Maybe some kids at A&M can come up with some bright ideas of what we can do with it. I know some folks talk about pumping it in the ground. That might work, but otherwise we're going to have to figure out something to do with the leftover brine, the leftover salt. That's economical. Otherwise, again, you'll destroy the entire Texas fishing industry if you just dump it in the ocean. So those are the really big things. I'll be passing it off to the next gentleman, but definitely will be, or do you have a question? Or? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So native grasses, if you for like your own yard, native grasses are generally significantly better. So let's say this is your standard carpet grass, right? Okay, this is what's been kind of standardized, simple. The roots of this carpet grass might only go down like a few inches. Most grasses, the ones that have been like, for lack of better words, manufactured, have a very shallow root system. Native Texas grasses, because they had to survive in drought-prone areas, they might go down through the floor. So finding native plants, finding native grasses would be good. The fun thing about this is those native grass, there's been cases where these native grasses will come back on their own, that their seed bank is already in the soil itself. So they might just be able to come back. There's also another, can't remember the name of the company, but where you say like, hey, I'm based, this is where I'm based. I'm based in Bryan and College Station. And they'll say, okay, on historical data, this is the grasses that are best for, these are the native grasses that are best for your area. Here's your own seed palette. So like they'll send you the seed mixture. It's generally good, better. This may not only be better visually, but better for water is to have a diversity of plants. We have noticed that even when there are shrubs, that those shrubs seem to produce better grasses near them. It's the wildest thing. You'll have like a shrub here, and surrounding it is really good grasses, and then 5 feet that way, it's a lot worse grasses. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Another another thing, this is a little bit more Texas Hill Country ordeal, but a lot of these a lot of cedar trees, they are not native. Some of them are native to Texas, most of them are not. Fun story about that. There was only one animal that kept the cedars at bay, and that was the buffalo. So when we took out the buffalo, the cedars took over. Cedars consume about 8 times the normal amount of water that a tree would normally do. So I, again, using my family's ranch, when I was a little kid, my granddaddy really maintained it. Like he did kept the cedars at bay, did all the rotational grazing, so on and so forth. And I remember the springs would always flow. There would always be little ponds for me to swim in. And the moment the cedars came up, after he passed away, the pond, the springs disappeared. But then when we cut all the cedars back down, came right back up. Mesquite's okay. They can be annoying, particularly for your tractor or your tires. But but for us, what I have noticed is where there's mesquite, the grasses around it are generally better. My theory on why is we just like how we breathe, plants breathe, trees breathe. But and when they exhale, you know, when we exhale carbon dioxide, they exhale oxygen, but they also exhale water. So they help the dew point in that area, and they kind of give grasses a little bit of extra water, little by little. Yes. Unfortunately, I don't because my homeowners association is a bunch of cows. So and goats. So those are my homeowners association. That's a really good question. I'm going to write that down and kind of look into that. So write that down.
Folks, I think we're gonna let all of us kind of have our introduction, and then I think we're gonna keep going.
Yeah. Say what? Oh yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and pass it, and I look forward to more questions.
My, I'll be learning a lot, and I'm learning a lot. Howdy. Howdy. I'm Bob Yancy. I'm with the College Station City. I'm Bob Yancy. I'm with the College Station City Council. Been here since '89 when I got out of the Air Force. Graduated from Texas A&M after being a listed guy and fell in love with the community and never left. That's pretty much my story. Chairman of the Board of Baylor Scott White Hospital previously, if I didn't mention that. A little bit since I'm on City Council, we've had a lot contemporaneous in the news relative to water, and I thought I'd try to race through a lot of data and answer questions for people on what the heck just happened with the lawsuit and everything else. First, a primer on the City of College Station's water system. We're capable of producing about 30 million gallons of fresh, clean drinking water each day. 490 miles of water distribution line, groundwater wells, pump stations, 3 elevated water storage tanks. Our water system is rated superior by the state of Texas, and we've received numerous awards from the Environmental Protection Agency for outstanding operations and maintenance. College Station gets its water from city-owned land over the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer, particularly the Carrizo, Sparta, and Simsboro sand formations from that aquifer. And I passed out 5 maps of the aquifer. You'll kind of circulate those if you haven't seen them already. Really interesting operation to me. The maximum temperature of the water once it comes out of the ground is 118 degrees Fahrenheit. To reduce temperature, the water is pumped through cooling towers at Sandy Point pump station, lowering the temperature to below 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And then raw water transmission lines carry that water, that cooled water, 13 miles from Sandy Point pump station to the Dowling Road pump station for further treatment, where it gets just a little bit of chlorine. And that's for quality water standards. But it's amazingly clean water. Really, really a blessing. Water we get out of the aquifer. We also use a lot of reclaimed water on our parks to further the discussion about things we can do with irrigation, which is by far the biggest consumer of water. So the lawsuit basics. How did we get here? First, the parties. Texas A&M University was the first to file. The city of Bryan, the city of College Station, and the county joined that lawsuit later against a defendant, the Brazos Valley Groundwater Conservation District. And might seem counterintuitive. Why wouldn't we sue the San Francisco company called Upwell? They gave themselves a very friendly name, Upwell Good Farms, Brazos Valley. But they're actually, that's their DBA. It's actually Upwell Water, and they are backed by Crestview Capital and owned by a guy named Tim, and ran by a guy named Tim Pension, who is a young serial entrepreneur, Harvard grad. And basically what they're doing is they're opportunistically taking advantage of Texas' very liberal water capture rights, which Robert alluded to. But this Texas A&M sued our local district, and the reason they did that is really interesting. Created pursuant to the authority granted in the Texas Constitution, that district's been entrusted by the state with conservation of the state's water resources. Ours covering Robertson and Brazos counties. In order for a well to be drilled and tap into that aquifer, I refer to them euphemistically as straws. In order for you to put a straw in the ground, you got to get a permit. And when reviewing an application for a permit to transport that water outside of the district has a unique responsibility to look at and protect that resource. But they have to balance that responsibility with the very strong private property rights that are enshrined in our laws. And so how do they reconcile that? And so They had Upwell come and make a bunch of permit applications of their own. They, when they knocked on doors, they found ranchers and farmers and landowners, and made them an offer that they could not refuse, and that is their water. And so they partnered with Upwell, a lot of local landowners, and the total aggregate wells, and I'm skipping over a lot of information here, will really blow your mind. It's give me an opportunity to find it in my notes. 43 permits total, in total. And I believe it was 8 transport permits that would allow them to take water out of the county. Now, what do they want to take? Initially, what scared everybody was they wanted 107,000 acre feet of water per year. That's twice as much water as Texas A&M University, the city of College Station, the city of Bryan, Wixon Valley, and Welborn Special Utility District use in a year. Twice as much. And so the minute that those permits were filed, there is city representation, both cities and the county on the board. The minute that was filed, a panic button was hit here locally, because we were already having issues relative to water, as Robert alluded to. And basically what we figured was, with them doing this, it takes us from 2070 the desired future condition and curtailment. Robert told you what desired future condition is. Curtailment is when the water authorities see that DFC, that desired future condition, has been hit, and they're getting below it based on how much water is being pulled out of the ground. That's when they flip what they call curtailment switch. And curtailment immediately restricts how much everybody can take out of the ground. Well, we thought we were going to be 2070 and we'll be able to figure it out, salinization, desalinization, what have you. But if Upwell had gotten all 107,000 acre feet of water, it took our curtailment from 2070 to 2036. And 2036 is not that far away. And that was based on existing populations, not population growth. So that's why Texas A&M University, with the semiconductor plants on the horizon and other things, that's why the city of College Station, Bryan, and the county enjoying the lawsuit. But you can't really go after Upwell because they have right of capture, and it is private property rights. And those landowners did want to monetize their mineral rights and their water in the ground and partner with this company. So the best people to go after was the Brazos County or Brazos Valley Groundwater Conservation District for not, in our estimation, exercising their due diligence and seeing the impact that this was going to have, where policy meets, as Robert so ably described. And so we sued them. And the lawsuit, even though had we fought it out, they probably would have prevailed, but it would have been very expensive against 4 relatively deep-pocketed plaintiffs. And there was always that chance that they would not prevail. But we could have drug them out for years in court. And what they want to do with this water is they want to dig up a pipeline install a pipeline from here to Georgetown and to Hutto, and they want to sell it to them because they're running out of water even faster than we are. And if they were drug out in court for years, then time value of money being what it is, they were compelled to strike a deal with us. So the settlement agreement basically says that instead of 107,000 acre feet of water per year, you can export a maximum of 50,000 acre feet of water per year. Your permits will only be for a 30-year term instead of in perpetuity. And there will be a contractual ramp up of the transport that you can send out of here. Now, they probably don't care too much about that because they've still got to dig a pipeline and no telling how long that would take and how many billions it would cost. But we had to go for what we could get. And so prior to January 2034, they shall not export from the district more than 23,000 acre feet per year under their transport permits. Prior to January 1, 2039, they can export no more than 30,000 acre feet per year. January 1, 2034, no more than 23,000 acre feet per year, AFY. And prior to January 1, 2039, no more than 39,000 acre feet per year under the transport permits. Notably, not all of the water that they bring out of the ground would likely be subject to the transport permit because not all of it would go to Bush County. But the crux of it. They're going to pay 3 times the negotiated tier 2 rate of volume in excess of the applicable ramp. So they can exceed that ramp if they want to, but they're going to pay a pretty penny for that water to the groundwater district if they do. Basically up to, estimates are $180 million. That money is used by the groundwater district to help other people with straws in the ground, landowners, farmers, ranchers, municipalities, special utility districts, when the desired future condition gets lowered, and it will, and it becomes out of reach of existing straws length that is in the ground. Does that make sense? And just like, that's right. Once it gets below that level, then that drill has to be reworked, that well has to be reworked and drilled deeper in order to get down to that desired future condition. That $180 million is used for those engineering, design, and construction efforts to help people and entities when their wells start going dry because the water is now below the end of the bottom. So this is real, people. This is real world where the rubber meets the road stuff. That's the bottom line on that. What is the city of College Station doing? I can wrap up pretty quickly. All of the water we put on Veterans Park, the entire athletic complex, is reclaimed water from the Carter Creek treatment plant. 29 million gallons a year of irrigation water. We're looking at various forms of recapture off of our state-of-the-art plant, the Lick Creek wastewater treatment plant down south of Double Creek. That water, when we're done with it after treatment, it goes into Navasota River. I mean, it's that clean and that good. And so municipalities all over the state of Texas are looking at how do we take that water and reclaim that water that we've treated, we've separated the, we won't talk about it, the gross solids, the sludge and all of that. We've separated all that out. We treated the water, we treated it again, and now it's almost a drinking level. With one more process, albeit an expensive investment, it can be made perfectly potable water. And cities all over the state are looking at that, and at the same time, begging the state for desalination and other things. The future, a big part of the future is going to be reclamation. A big part of the future is, there's no way around it. Water has been abundant and cheap forever. I know people complain about their water bill, but the truth is, it's been relatively cheap. The future looks like we need to prepare that water is going to get exponentially more expensive as we go. And then people will be compelled to do xeriscaping instead of putting 70% of their water consumption, treated, expensive water, right back out in the dirt. And so this is where it's headed. This is the real world of growth that we can't stop. The demand for that growth is here. If we do that, we're looking at doing, we're going to be doing that for Central Park, Steve Beachy Park. Steve's a good friend of mine. That park is his namesake. We're going to irrigate the entire thing with reclaimed water. And we're building $90 million in wells, 3 new wells. 10, 11, and 12. And so there's literally, I think President Obama coined the term first, the race to the bottom. Well, whatever he was applying it to, it is more applicable to what's going on with water. Because the way the law in Texas works right now, the more wells you have in the ground, the safer you are and the further you push the horizon out of your curtailment panic button. So it goes by well. And so cities all over the state of Texas are running out and spending massive amounts of money to dig deep wells so that when curtailment in their aquifer hits, that instead of only having one well that can only pump 10,000 acre feet of water per year, they have X number of wells, let's say 3, that can under curtailment pump 30,000 acre feet per year. And so everybody's racing around. They're just trying to push that timeline, even though all we're doing is drawing the aquifer down even faster. It's like we don't have a choice. You know, if we leave the static number of wells that we have, then we're going to run out of water. And our version of curtailment looks scary, and it looks scary faster. But if you have more wells in the ground, then you push that thing out on the horizon. We just spent last Thursday night $3.198 million for the second early works package for wells 10, 11, and 12, plus a city contingency in the amount of $320,000 for a total appropriation of 3.5. Ultimately, those wells will cost around $80 million for the 3 of them. That's how deep and industrial strength straws they are. That's your update on what happened. We settled the agreement. We pushed from 2036 to 2050. But the crisis is not over. It's really just beginning. Don't need to scare everybody, but water is, we got to look at everything. I have a wastewater treatment plant, AKA a septic system at my home. 50% of irrigation is reclaimed water. Every time we flush the toilet, brush our teeth, wash our clothes, that water gets treated, pumped out onto the grass. That grass grows just as good and looks just as green as the freshwater irrigated grass immediately around the house. Gentleman's comment about Texas native grasses, I have both on my property. I live on 4 acres. The immediate acre around my house has zoysia. Expensive, beautiful, gorgeous, drinks water like nobody's business. Everywhere else in the back of the house is Texas native grasses. I mowed it today before I came here. It looks no different in its own way. It's more beautiful than the zoysia grass. So xeriscaping, rock beds, all of it. We're all going to have to think way different about water and sadly, we're all going to probably want to pay a lot more for it, relatively soon. With that, I'll hush. Sorry to be a downer, but that's your contemporary update. I'm Bob Yancy. Thank you.